Welcome at our ECM discourse series. Today, I'm very honored that I can welcome a guest who came from Montreal, from Canada, to us. A guest that is very dear to me and also a highly estimated colleague, Marie Fraser. Marie Fraser is someone who is thinking museology in a way that is not only serious, but also pushing the boundaries of how we understand exhibition histories with the material. And I think we will hear about that. You are a professor of art history and museology at the University of Québec in Montréal. And in this context, you also hold the UQAM Research Chair in Curatorial Studies and Practices. Sometimes I have the feeling that we know each other forever and we have so many things in common, also with the ECM program. But because if we look at your biography, which is a very serious academic biography for sure, but it's also a practical biography. You are a curator, you have been chief curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Montreal from 2010 to 2013, and curator of the Canada Pavilion at the 56th Venice Biennial in 2015. So your research is practice, and I think your practice is also research. I have seen one of your research exhibitions. So in this sense, you are also directing a research and reflection group, which has been working on museum collections since 2014. And you are involved in several research projects funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, including Investigative Museology, Rethinking Exhibition History through the Trajectory of Artworks, and the partnership project, New Uses of Collections in Art Museums. Then, of course, you are also publishing and editing and bringing voices together. One publishing context that you co-edited is Réinventer la collection, l'art et le musée au temps de l'événement, donc reinventing the collection, art and the museum in the times of the events, of the l'événementiel, and many other publications. So I'm very happy that you're here. Welcome with me, Marie Fraser.
Thank you, Nora. I would like to thank the ECM team for giving me the opportunity to meet the student of the museology program and to present my research. It is an honor for me to be in Vienna. Thank you to Nora, Beatrice, Christine, Martina, Renate, and Mira. My presentation is part of a research project entitled Investigative Museology. At the crossroads of art history, museology, curatorial studies, and anthropology, this research documents and analyzes the trajectory of artworks through an approach inspired by forensic investigative methods. I study how artworks are created, handled, exhibited and displaced throughout their history. How are they presented and for what purposes? Under what circumstances do they travel from one country to another one to be displayed in museums around the world? How and why do artworks cross geographical borders, engage in geographical conflicts, and undergo transformation as a result of these interactions? To answer these questions, I would like to present an exhibition that I recently co-curated at the Gallery of the Université du Québec in Montreal with Lisa Bourali, a PhD candidate in museology, and Louis-Charles Lanier, an architect and professor of exhibition design. We worked on the University art collection where I teach. Titled Inventories of Collections, this exhibition tells the story of the collection through the inventories that shaped it. Our research highlights the life of the objects, their provenance, but also their disappearance and destruction. By bringing together around 100 artworks and archival documents, we sought to uncover hidden narrative from the first object gathered at the Fine Arts School of Montreal in 2023 and the founding of the University in 1969 to the most recent acquisition in 2024. Before introducing the exhibition and our curatorial approach, I would like to say a few words about investigative museology and present a work by artist Simon Starling, who also uses investigative methods to reconstruct the display of a collection. I led the foundation of Investigative Museology project around 2015, about 2015. I was fascinated by the 2011 exhibition of a Picasso painting from the Van Abbe Museum collection in Eindhoven, displayed in Ramallah in the West Bank. Since then, with a team of students, we have launched other investigations, for example, into the circulation of artworks during the Cold War, as well as the explosion of an August Rodin sculpture in front of the Cleveland Museum in 1970 during protests against the Vietnam War and racism in the United States. Each investigation is complex, and we aim to document the long-term life of artworks. The Investigative Museology research project is strongly inspired by material culture, particularly the social life of things and the writing of anthropologist Arnold Appadurai. One of the key contributions of material studies in its definition of trajectory, which, and I quote, is a specific method that consists in tracing objects as they move through different stages of their existence, as they pass through different regimes of value, and as they are constructed in various ways at the moments when they cross the threshold separating these different regimes. End of quote. However, this approach must be adapted to the specificity of artworks. For Appadurai, trajectories are heterogeneous, and regimes of value are fluctuating and plural for the same object. Yet, these trajectories are always regulated by social and cultural norms. I do not have the time here to delve into the details of the social life of things. Like Appadurai, I document the moments and situations in which artworks shift between value regimes, but I also expand the study of an object biography to much a broader set of events and narratives. As Bruno Latour suggests, I consider that objects have their own lives, shaped by exchange and interactions with humans, and more broadly, with the living world. To adapt the analysis of trajectory to the specific nature of artworks, I focus on three aspects of their existence. First, the life of the object. This includes the provenance of the materials, conditions of production, degradation, restoration, exchanges and transactions, the chain of ownership, an acquisition into a museum collection, which places the artwork within a new system of classification and value. Second, the exhibition history. How is an artwork exhibit and re-exhibit over time? Does it remain material traces of its past presentation? This involves documenting the different ways an artwork has been displayed over time, showing how museographic norms influence its life, and, on the contrary, how the artwork itself contributes to transform these norms. Exhibitions follow different formats: colonial, national, international, global, historical, monographic, retrospective, collective, thematic, or commemorative. They are governed by museological and curatorial practice. It is therefore crucial to observe how artworks transform to successive presentations and to consider that museographic frameworks play a role in their legitimacy and in the construction of their value. Third, the circulation and displacement of artworks. How are artworks displaced and circulated, and why? How do they cross geographical borders? How do they participate in geographical conflict? In the Ephemeral Museum, art historian Francis Haskell provides one of the few historical studies on the circulation of artworks, revealing the political complexity of exhibitions. I aim to document the circulation of artworks and analyze their interaction by examining the cultural, social, and political context in which they are presented. Museums are not the only actor in these circulations. Exhibitions function as sites of exchange within a global political economy. They are at the forefront of colonial enterprise, propaganda effort, and diplomatic relations. From a methodological point of view, the primary steps in this research is to retrace and trace the biography of artworks, which requires locating and processing a vast number of sources. We mainly work with primary sources, including archive, artwork files, exhibition records, and collection databases. However, our investigations extend beyond these traditional art history sources found in museum archives and publications. We also draw on other types of records, such as ministerial archives, including those of foreign affairs and embassies, as well as investigative reports, meeting minutes, business registers, and more. The archive of an artwork, just like the archive of an exhibition or of a collection, doesn't exist. It must be reconstructed. I show you some images of L'œil attentif, an exhibition I curated in 2023 at the Molinari Foundation in Montreal. It was a partial reconstruction of the Responsive Eye exhibition originally presented at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 1965. This reconstruction aimed to highlight the complex role of artwork circulation during the Cold War. Among the sources and material I use in the exhibition and I want to exhibit, they are exhibiting photography, museum labels, exhibition catalog, other exhibition and material about these exhibition related, correspondence, transport document, key actor, individual, institution, museum, etc. I also produce new sources, chronology of events, diagram, inventory, and list of artwork, floor plans, maps, and cartography to visualize the data we collect. My research highlights the growing importance of exhibition history, curatorial practice, and more specifically, exhibition reconstruction. In one of the earlier analyses on the subject, Risa Greenberg refers to this type of exhibition as remembering exhibition emphasizing their commemorative and tribute function. She writes, the emergence of remembering exhibition is a manifestation of Western culture's current fascination with memory as a modality for constructing individual and collective identity. How we remember exhibition and our need to remember them are very much part of recent exhibition culture. Remembering exhibitions also attests to the belief in a dynamic notion of history where past and present are interwoven. As such, remembering exhibition belongs to the practice of spatializing memory, making memory concrete, tangible, actual, and interactive. End of quote. I aim to take this work of memory reenactment further by considering the exhibition as a space that bears witness to an event that once took place but no longer exists. Reconstruction, thus, becomes a means of gathering evidence to reframe the exhibition in a new light. A key example is Nashbau, a reconstruction, a project undertaken by artist Simon Starling in 2007 within the collection of the Museum Volkwang in Essen in Germany. This series of 4 black and white photographs brings the early 20th century history of the collection into a new temporality, our present. More than that, Simon Starling gives reconstruction a political meaning, turning the exhibition into a crime scene. Starling project involved reconstructing the collection as it was exhibited between 1929 to 1936 in order to rephotograph it. Nashbau thus reveals the tragic events that mark this collection. The Essen Museum collection, renowned for its commitment to European modern art, was dismantled. Among 100 and 400 works were declared degenerated, confiscated by the Nazi regime. Many of them were displayed in the degenerated art exhibition which opened in Munich in 1937. In 1944 and 1945, Essen was devastated by bombings, and the building housing the collection was destroyed. It was rebuilt after the war, and while several works were restituted starting in the 1950s, the collection was never fully reassembled. To create his photograph, Starling recreate one of the exhibition rooms where part of the collection has been displayed, basing his work on installation views taken in the 1930s by photographer Albert Ranger-Parch. However, to recreate the room as faithfully as possible, Starling had to replace painting by Franz Marc, Otto Müller, Eric Eckel, and Giorgio de Chirico with color reproductions, as the original works no longer belong to the collection. Yet their absence is not immediately visible. Because the photographs are in black and white, you cannot see the difference. The only way to see this is by consulting the list of the works from the Essen Museum as seen in Simon Starling's photographs found in the exhibition catalog. This list provides factual information about each artwork: the artist's name, title and years of creation, materials, dimensions, acquisition date, whether it was confiscated by the Nazi regime in 1937, whether it was returned after the war, and its inventory number. However, the detail concerning the 4 non-restituted work differed slightly. The mentioned color photograph appears above their entries. Their current location is not the Essen Museum, and they lack an inventory number. This list tells us that the painting by Giorgio de Chirico is now in Switzerland, while the works of Frank Smark and Eric Eckel are in the United States, and Otto Müller's painting is in Münster. It does suggest that European and American museums still hold works of art loot to the eve of the World War II. How many goes on collections and museum history? As part of the exhibition inventories of the museum, we encounter several ghosts. The collection was officially established in 1969 following the closure of the Fine Art School of Montreal. At that time, art education was transferred to the Université, which inherited at the same time a collection of artworks and objects without any formal inventory. This collection included architectural fragments, artworks by former professors and students of the Fine Arts Art School, diplomatic gifts such as this mummy donated by the Egyptian government in 1927, decorative art objects, and Inuit sculptures. The exact number of objects transferred to the University remain unknown. From the 1970s, the collection shifted its focus to contemporary art to align with a less traditional approach to art education. Today, it comprises over 4,000 objects. When we began our research, we were intrigued by a series of photographs preserved in the archive of the Fine Arts School of Montreal. These images show sculpture and objects that are not listed in the current collection database. Where do these artworks come from? Where are they? Why are they missing from the collection's inventory? The photographs reveal that these objects serve as model in the fine arts studio. They were exhibited in common space and even decorated the director's office. These images launched our investigation. They led us to uncover a significant collection of plaster casts and artworks once stored at the School of Fine Arts. Among the objects in this photograph are plaster casts of iconic works such as Diane by Jean-Antoine Hudon in the collection of the Musée du Louvre in Paris, a bust of Puvis de Chavannes by Auguste Rodin, Saint John the Baptist, also by Rodin, a fragment of the tympanum from Notre-Dame d'Amiens Cathedral, several bas-reliefs, painting reproduction, and a 17th century Gobelin tapestry. We sought to retrace the life of these objects, which appear to form a collection, their provenance, their use for teaching and exhibition purpose, and their unexplained disappearance. Our investigation into the history of the School of Fine Arts collection goes back as far as 1908. Retracing this story took considerable time, as the University archive contained no documents regarding the origin of its own collection. This may seem surprising, but the documentation of a collection's history is often fragmented, incomplete, and scattered across multiple archival sources. This dispersion occurs because a collection's formation involves numerous actors, institutions, transactions, and relocation. I will not go into the full details of this trajectory here. However, it was thanks to a 1922 newspaper article describing an exhibition of plaster cast of major French sculpture that we were able to piece together part of the collection inventory and its journey to Montreal. Here is some part of the account of our investigation. In 1908, the Société pour l'avancement des sciences, des lettres et des arts du Canada was tasked with acquiring objects and artworks for the creation of a museum dedicated to French art in Montreal. The goal was to establish a collection that would contribute to the advancement of arts and science, serving both teaching and public education. Acquisition began in 2012. By 2014, as war spread across Europe, the urgency of transporting the collection to Montreal grew. 10 plaster casts, 2 sculptures, a 17th century Gobelins tapestry, and 44 paintings, watercolor, and engravings were carefully packed. However, the 6 crates initially set to depart from Le Havre on June 25, 1914, aboard the Sicilian, had to be stored due to the dangers posed by German torpedo boats patrolling the English Channel. As stated in the correspondence for the time, it was deemed unwise to expose the collection to the perils of the sea during the war. After the war, this first part of the collection finally left Le Havre and arrived in Montreal at the beginning of 1919. Acquisition resumed between 1919 and 1922, now under the direction of the Comité France-Amérique. The collection's focus began more defined, with the intention of creating a retrospective museum covering a broad historical period from the 12th to the 19th century. Many plaster casts and reproduction of significant artworks and architectural elements were produced by the Musée d'Ethnographie du Trocadéro, the Louvre Museum, and the Rodin Museum in Paris. Between March and September 1922, 48 crates containing the entire collection were loaded on 3 ships in Le Havre, bound for Montreal, an impressive transatlantic transport operation. The final shipment include, here it's at the transport documentation, and the final shipment include 4 plaster casts of work by Auguste Rodin. It was through transport documents that we were able to reconstruct an initial inventory of this collection. These records are not the most reliable documents we have. The logistics of moving artworks are complex, especially when they must cross borders. They require careful handling, proper crating, detailed inventory list for each shipment, and official declaration of provenance. But who were the artworks intended for? This question arose at the time of their shipment to Montreal. While acquisitions were progressing rapidly to build the collection, the idea of establishing a museum dedicated to French art was gradually abandoned. The Montreal School of Fine Arts, founded a year later in 1923, became the ideal place to house a collection intended for art education. While awaiting their transfer to the Fine Arts School, the Montreal Public Library hosts a major exhibition. The inauguration took place on September 12, 1922. We discovered 3 images from this exhibition published in newspaper of the time. A photomontage featuring some of the major exhibition works, a general view of the exhibition space, and a close-up of a display cabinet containing decorative objects. The Guide to the Museum of French Art Education in Montreal, published for the occasion, lists up to 58 major plaster casts, some of which can be identified in the only surviving view of the exhibition. Today, most of this collection has vanished, since it was the first and the last time these artworks were presented together. The exhibition looked like a crime scene. Less than a year later, in 1923, the artworks were moved to the newly established School of Fine Arts, where they likely remain until the 1950s or the 1960s. Starting in 1963, no plaster cast appear in any of the documents we recovered. Only a few pieces were preserved and reassigned to the University's art collection in 1969, where they are still recorded in the current database. The inventories of a collection exhibition allow us to trace the turbulent history of this collection, identify certain objects, attribute them, and connect them to one another. Yet, the disappearance of 4 plaster casts by Auguste Rodin, including a life-size mold of Saint Jean the Baptist, continue to haunt us. Why and how did all these works disappear? Why and how was the history of this collection, intended to establish a museum of French art in Montreal, forgotten? In the exhibition, we dedicated a room to telling this fascinating story of a vanished collection whose only survived through photography. Why talk about an exhibition as a crime scene? As I mentioned earlier, the 1922 exhibition was the first and the last time the collection was seen in its entirety. Calling it a crime scene is, of course, a metaphor, but it is also a method, an approach, a critical and political perspective on the exhibition. We often work with very few documents, very little evidence. We are called upon to reconstruct our own object of study piece by piece, following clues, just as a forensic investigation gathers as much as evidence as possible to reconstruct a crime scene from traces and fragments to understand what happened. In my research, I work mainly on absence and disappearance. I also seek to uncover the secret life of artworks, as the sociologist Yael Kreplak describes, as well as the secret life of exhibitions and collection, everything that museum as an institution seeks to conceal. Working with ghosts means revealing the hidden and forgotten life of artworks and collections. Some museum practices have the effect of erasing the history of the objects before they enter their collections. Before concluding, I will summarize the key aspects of our investigation that highlight this erasure, whether intentional or not, by museum, and that we integrate into the exhibition inventories of a collection. First, inventory number. When an artwork enters a museum collection, it is assigned an inventory number. This number is not random. It is unique to each artwork and serves to record it in the collection, indicating the date of its acquisition. Every museum has its own classification system. Most begin an inventory number with the year the object entered the collection. This inventory number marks a rupture with the object's past in order to integrate it into the museum's logic. In the University's collection, the 86 objects that remain from the School of Fine Arts were assigned an inventory number starting with 1969. By giving these objects a new inventory number, the University effectively erased a significant part of their history prior to 1969, including the moment they first arrived in Montreal. Second, museum label. In the exhibition, we wanted to highlight this anomaly by using museum labels in a critical and reflective way. On one hand, the labels draw attention to the biography of each object, and on the other one, they reveal our own research processes. Some objects' labels contain multiple inventory numbers, precisely to reveal their provenance and life history. Third, object trajectory. Here you can see the room where we displayed the key documents we gathered. Photograph taken at the School of Fine Arts during the 1920s, list of acquisition before World War I, correspondence, shipping documents, and the photomontage of major works from the 1922 exhibition. At the opening of the inventories of the collection, we had not yet found the installation views and the exhibition guide of the exhibition at the National Library. That's why you don't see them in the image. Inventory 4, inventory of the Fine Art School legacy. We never found the official inventory of the School of Fine Art legacy. On the platform, you see on the screen, we presented an object representing each category to illustrate the eclectic nature of the collection we uncovered in reports. 5. Provenance research. Our research allows us to trace the origin of several objects, assign them new titles, and propose more accurate dating. 6. Display of the research process. Finally, at the center of the gallery, a table displayed the archives that shaped the exhibition. Organized into 10 inventories, following the collection's chronology from 1969 to today, the table narrates the work involved in identifying, classifying, locating, and acquiring artwork until now. It also reveals the incredible material transformation of inventory since the collection's inception, from black and white silver photograph to today's digital database. To conclude, inventories of a collection has helped to better understand the university's art collection, expand our knowledge, and reveal the political project behind the arrival of these artworks in Montreal and their exhibition in 1922. A collection of this scale does not travel without purpose. While searching for photographs of the exhibition in newspaper, we discovered the existence of a similar collection in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We suspect that others exist across the Americas and potentially in other regions of the world. By exporting copies of its masterpiece to strategic locations, France was secretly following an imperialist and colonial agenda. We are currently investigating this unexpected political dimension at the origin of the university's collection and mapping the movement of these artworks to shed light on these cultural expansionisms between the two world wars. And of course, we're still trying to find out where the 4 missing Rodin sculptures have gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marie. You have been showing us something that we discuss a lot, that in the field of museology, I would say the critical practice that was for a long time a practice of analysis became more and more a curatorial practice. As a curator and as a researcher, or as a curatorial researcher, you actually work on the material in order to understand something about the world. And I think it's really interesting, these relations. Did you? I feel that in your projects this is very much about translocal histories and global politics. Where do you see the relation between the small material work and the bigger, like let's say, the micropolitics and the macropolitics of your practice?
That's a very good question. Thank you, Nora. For the first part of your question, I would like to say something. I did my PhD just after my master. I was teaching at the Universität, and then I went to the Museum of Contemporary Art, as you said when you previously, and it was I was an independent curator. I was curating shows and etc. but I never worked into a museum, an institution, and I was invited to as a guest curator and the director of the education part of the museum. It was such an experience for me, and at that time I was a professor at the Universität, and after 4 years I had to decide what to do, where I need to be or where I wanted to be, because to stay at the museum, I had to quit my job as a professor at the University. And I decided to go back to the university. It took me years to be able to work both as a researcher, as a professor, and as a curator. And I think this investigative museology project is exactly what it was needed for me, because for the first time I'm able to, to mix all the aspect of my practice and my thinking. And as I said to you yesterday or before yesterday, I don't remember. I don't know exactly when I start an investigation, I don't know exactly what will be the form of this investigation. Is it an article, a book, an exhibition, a session in a seminar? I don't know. It's all open, and sometimes it's an exhibition and then an article. And now I'm working on a book, and I'm working on a book in a collective book with all the students who have worked with me doing some investigation. So I'm really happy because it could be now for me it's more fluid than it was never before. For the second part of your question. I don't know. I think, for example, that these documents contain a lot of information about shipping artworks, about borders, about colonialisms, about imperialisms. It is just unbelievable. It's a very nice document. And when I select the document to exhibit them, I choose the color and I choose the stamp, not only the content of the document, but it comes together. And for me, this is an example of what you just described. To work with small, very small thing, very document. It took us a month to find this document, I have to say. And when we finally found the file we were looking for, it was just unbelievable. And we discovered the magnitude of the project. And then we were looking for photographs. I was telling to my research assistants, we have to find photograph of the exhibition of 1922. It's very important. It is very important because this is the only way that we can compare the list we have on transportation documents and what arrived in Montreal, because there is no inventory, and this was the only way. So just with a view, an installation view of an exhibition, there's so much information in it. It's just unbelievable. And you know, sometimes it's just like small like this is in the newspaper. I don't know if I answer your question, but anyway, it's.
No, absolutely, and I agree with you looking at these documents, and I had the chance to see also one of your exhibitions in Montreal, and each document opens for many research questions. So in somehow, luckily, you have a lot of PhD students in the whole museological research community, because this investigative method opens for many very interesting and relevant and unasked questions. We will continue, but I have to ask you, do you have questions, thoughts, remarks?
Should then every museum have an investigation researcher?
It's a question?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, now in museums, since the 1970s, most of the museum has...
The question is, should they?
Should they?
Oh
yeah.
Do you think every museum should have an investigative curator?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
Yeah, I would like to add, I come from the museum side where I used to work with collection history, and I also discovered that it is of great importance what you call the biography of an object. It's also for art historical research very important. I was working with old master paintings, and we had a collection that was centuries old, and you can gain so much knowledge. And I also think there are a lot of not even yet asked questions that, and I'm still looking for a way how to present this knowledge, how to present. We also did reconstructions of the exhibitions of the past, as long as you could do it. And yeah, so I would be very interested what thoughts museologists have, how it is possible to present this or to give it to the research community, what all these inventories provide. Yeah.
Maybe you pass the microphone to Martin and then you answer two questions.
Thank you very much. My question is deliberately provocative, following up on another question whether there are more investigative researchers. I'm not a museum insider, but isn't that what art historians do? Isn't that what scientists do? So I do not seem to get what distinguishes investigating from just researching, because what you show, which is extremely interesting, is just what I think is the work of an art historian in the first place. So could you maybe find a name for the non-investigative part of it?
That's a good question. Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's not the first time somebody asked me that question. In that sense, I would say that I am a very traditional art historian. And I'm not sure that there is still a lot existing today.
There is another complex of questions that I want to address with you.
Sorry, Nora.
Yeah, continue.
And I think art historian, like Francis Asquel, which is one of my favorite, I think art historian are doing this kind of investigation into museum archive or more political archive to better understand the artworks, not to better understand the life of an artwork and the way an artwork participates actively in geographical events, I would say. I think this is the difference. Yeah.
This actually brings me to what I really would like to start to address with you also publicly, because I know that not a lot has been published about the, let's say, global politics dimension of the history of exhibitions, or maybe I could also say the soft power role that exhibitions play, which is when you start to look at the documents and when we share what we have seen in archives, has a much bigger role than we have ever discussed in art history or even in exhibition history. So can we just try to address this, or how you see it? I mean, of course, for you the Cold War came up, or here this cultural imperialism topic. Yesterday we also talked about Iran or Brazil. Can you just share some insights on how you would describe the role, the political role of exhibitions in the 20th century?
Again, that's a really good question, because I don't know where I am going. I don't know until where I'm going with this, because the investigation are so long, because I'm interested to document all the aspects of an artwork, from its materiality, where the materials come from, how is it produced, how is it exhibited, how the artwork circulate. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but I see that when I'm documenting and analyzing the trajectory of an object, there's a lot of political events that occur, appear, disappear, and yeah, I don't know. I like the idea to do a kind of a cartography. We discovered that a similar collection exists in Sao Paulo. I'm going in Sao Paulo in 2 months just to investigate this, because it is just impossible to do it from Montreal or from Europe or from anywhere else than in Sao Paulo there on site, because the archive are in Sao Paulo. So, but this project, at the beginning of this project, I was very frustrated about the emergence of a history of exhibition based on exhibition. I thought, no, it's not interesting to work that way, and it's not interesting also to work as art historian used to work, to see the exhibition as a site to better understand the object. I'm interested in the history of exhibition. It's really different. Yeah, and I think in all exhibition there's political content.
More questions, thoughts?
I have another question. It's about the selective privacy. So in the feudal systems, a lot of mainly men in power, they had their private collections for their friends, and it was a presentation of their power actually. So now in the new feudalism we have, so the tech millionaires, for example, I guess, I know, also the oil kings, they have their own collections that are semi-private, so they are or semi-public, so for their people. So I guess that a lot of lost artworks you can find in these areas. In this, do you have any? Did you do any research in Qatar or in Saudi Arabia or somewhere?
Yeah, I can show you some images of what in 1966 there were a fire at the École des Beaux-Arts de Montréal, but I don't think anything happened with the artwork, or not the entire collection. So that's an event that can have make the part of the collection disappear. And there was a big revolution in 1968, 69, beginning also the first year of the 60s, and a lot of work was disappearing at that time. But we investigate that. They did a symmetry of classic sculpture. When we start to be able to identify the sculpture that was used by the artist of the fine art school into this installation, art installation, we discover that it's not the same that came in 1922. It was other sculptures. So there's more and more that we thought. So instead, so our investigation is growing up. I don't know if I answer your questions, but yes, we are trying to find the rodent. Yeah, we cannot, as you said, working on the biography of an object is a long journey. So we cannot investigate all the objects in the collection. It would be good to find one plaster by Rodin. It would be good, of course, but the idea for me, it's the disappearance. It is what is most important for me. It's why artworks disappear. I think that's why my work is political. It's about the disappearance. It's not about the restitution. It's what is not possible to restitute.
Yeah, well, I think, you gave us a very beautiful example that seems as obvious as seldom, rare, of something that we could call investigative curating. We could also call it curatorial research, or exhibition history. And I think it would be great, it is great that you have many students around you and a whole scientific community in Canada. I think it would be great if we would have more of this in many places. And in this sense, thank you for the inspiration, Marie Fraser. Thanks to the public, thanks to you.